I'll get myself a water.
I got one. Is it for you?
Yes.
And thanks for joining me, everyone. Charles Moscowitz, Monday through Friday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, live at YouTube and at all subscribing platforms. It's an honor to welcome aboard Sheriff Joe Arpaio, an American legend, America's sheriff. Joe, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
You know, Joe, you've had a very interesting career. Most of us are not aware of the career before your period as sheriff in Arizona. So let's start out by your giving us a brief thumbnail of your career and how you got involved in law enforcement.
Well, you know, I was born in Springfield, Mass. My father and mother came from Italy, had a grocery store. I worked at the grocery store. I joined the Army when the Korean War broke out in 1950. I was 18. Now you can tell how old I am. Then when I left the Army as a sergeant in 1954, I joined the D.C. Police Department, walked a tough beat there, probably the toughest in America. And then I went to Vegas police for a short time. My name to fame or whatever was locking up Elvis. And then I took him down a police station going 100 miles an hour with a beautiful blonde on his motorcycle, but I did kick him loose. At the time, he was helping the president. I believe it was Reagan. And he got a Federal Bureau of Narcotics badge honorary from the president. Of course, I then joined the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in Chicago, had the same badge, although as years went by, I became BNDD, then the Drug Enforcement Administration, and I have all three badges. But I got sworn in, did my work in Chicago. They liked what I was doing, sent me to Turkey, so I was working undercover, making drug busts. One hat, the other hat, I'm meeting with the prime minister. There's only me there. Stopped the French Connection, went there. Then I got assigned to San Antonio, Texas as the head of the DEA there. Then to Washington as head of the DEA there. Then to Baltimore, deputy regional director at that time. Then Mexico City, where I covered Mexico, South America, Central America. That was an exciting deal. Had offices in Panama, worked with Noriega. I can go on and on. And then went to DC and eventually showed up here as head of the DEA in Arizona. Retired in 1982. Joined my wife in business, travel business. I never got a free ticket from her, but that's okay. And I did run for sheriff in 1992 and lasted until 2016 when George Soros pumped in millions of dollars for my Democrat opponent and Obama and the holder and waited a day before early voting when they got me on a civil contempt. It took them 8 years to get me on a Mickey Mouse civil contempt. So that is what happened. I got my phone ringing. It's my way. I
understand.
I say that for a reason. So here I am.
And, you know, given the forces that were arrayed against you, it's incredible that it took that long for them to pull up this Mickey Mouse charge, as you say. And, you know, you've been in the middle of this vast international underworld of drug trafficking that, you know, doing your best as a professional to try to take it on, to try to expose it, to try to bring people to justice. And yet you faced opposition, not only obviously from the criminals, but from the establishment. And it seems like that was a pattern in your career right up to the time when you became sheriff in Arizona, Maricopa County, where you were exercising your constitutional duties as sheriff, which is the highest law enforcement officer in the land, according to the Constitution.
Well, I made a big mistake. I'm not ashamed to say it.
Hmm.
When I ran for sheriff in '92, I beat the Republican guy that was sheriff.
Yeah.
But I said that the sheriff should be appointed and not elected. And I was thinking, because I was a bureaucrat, Army, police, federal, I always reported to somebody.
Hmm.
And then I learned that first month in office what a stupid mistake I made, because if I had to report to someone, I would have been fired the first month. No tents, no chain gangs, no nothing. So I made that mistake.
Okay.
Always elect a sheriff. If you don't like him, get rid of him. So I'm very strong, and that led me to a lot of problems. A lot of
And I
problems.
think the problem came about because most Americans don't realize that the sheriff, the county sheriff, is the highest authorized law enforcement officer in this country, not the FBI, not federal agencies. They could be there to assist a sheriff, possibly with investigation and research, but the actual implementation of the law is up to the sheriff, and sheriffs need to exercise their right as elected officials. And oftentimes they don't understand that. Here in Massachusetts, we have one good sheriff who does, that being Sheriff John Hodgkins. But you
Who
came
I
into,
know.
yeah, good
I,
man.
I was campaigning for another sheriff years ago. I'm from Massachusetts. I was head of the
Yeah.
DEA in Boston to cover that area.
Now, you say that you were bumped off your position by George Soros, who poured in apparently, I think it was $18 million into local DA races to elect left-wing sheriffs and DAs because he understood he understood more than most Americans that actually is where the power lies. And it is these same sheriffs in cities like Chicago and St. Louis that are giving a green light to terrorists who are burning black businesses, looting black homes, killing black people in our cities, and giving a pass to all of that. In fact, one of them was just elected to Congress in St. Louis. So I think people need to understand how damaging that has been to our system.
Well, let me say this. I'm not going to talk about other sheriffs. They have their own constituency. They have their own problems. But I'm the guy. When you talk about Soros, he gave 3 million against me, a sheriff, the only sheriff. He's going after district attorney. They
Mm-hmm.
all ganged up on me, but I'm the guy that went after a president of the United States. Tell me any other sheriff or anybody went after Obama. I
Well,
did it
that's
because the people asked me to do it. I'm not stupid. I was a federal official for many, many years. You think I didn't know if I'm going after the president? I'm sure they would not give me an award, which, by the way, I should get because I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that that birth certificate of his is a fake, 150% fake. And one thing before I go underground, if you know what I mean, I want to know why, how in this country, no one, the media, no law enforcement, FBI, no one would ever report my case, what I had. No one
for
can
the
cover
same.
that up.
I think, Joe. I mean, to give an analogy, it's the same reason why no one in the mainstream media is reporting the kickbacks, the graft, the corruption, the influence peddling that has been conducted by by presidential candidate Joe Biden over a 40-year career. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to report on it because it is inconvenient to their globalist view, their view that is consonant with George Soros and other international communists. That's why.
Yeah, well, wait a minute. Okay, I agree with that. However, I'm talking about media. Any media won't talk about it. They're talking about Biden and his son, whether it's negative or positive, it
Oh,
doesn't
they're putting a
matter.
positive spin on it. It's because the media is now controlled by about 7 companies. So I think it's actually down to 5. And if you want to be in the media, you want to work in the media, you have to kowtow to their agenda. And if you don't, you're gone. That's why. I mean, if you get a like small player like me in these little shows, we're being censored, we're being shadow banned, we're being taken off the air, and meanwhile, the big players get to decide what the American people hear and what they don't hear. And your agenda obviously ran contrary to that. You were asserting your sovereign powers as the sitting sheriff, elected to office to investigate crime and criminality, at all levels. And the fact that you challenged the president of the United States, that's part of our system of checks and balances. We're supposed to do that. Now, I want to ask you about the pardon from President Trump. What happened with that? What was that like?
Well, that was a situation which you will read in my book about the judicial system. I told you it took them 8 years to get me on a contempt of court. Had a law firm that's called Covington Burling, where
Oh,
Holder came from. I'm
yeah,
saying that for a reason. I'm going to connect that dot.
good.
And they went after me. They went after me when I talked about the swine flu. 60 million people got affected. And when I went to the tents to interview 10 illegal immigrants from Mexico, I was doing my job. I want to know if they brought it in.
Right.
Short story. No. We found out that in the county or province they were at, 300 people died. I went public on that. In fact, I went public on that 5 months ago, wrote a press release to 300 media. They wouldn't cover it. I talked about the swine flu, but I also said during that same year, 2009, Obama and Holder, after when he become president, they do 100-word what they're going to do. My name was there. They were targeting me way back, and they even said we don't have the evidence, but we're going to get them anyway. That was
They had
2009.
They had an enemies list, in other words.
Yeah, that was 2009. That's the year my phones were tapped.
Hmm.
That's the year that in 2009. That's the year that they appealed my pardon, or eventually they did, which led the president, who, by the way, is my hero. I was with him from day one, July 2015, when I introduced him. Nobody else would.
Yep,
And I'm
good.
with him to
As was
the end.
mine.
I don't care. I'm a flip flopper.
Hmm.
So he's my hero. I never had a hero in my life. NBC interviewed me last year and said, "Is John McCain your hero?" I paused and I said, 4 months prior to that, this is the truth. I never lie. I woke up, told my wife of 62 years, I finally found my hero. And I told the reporter,
Yeah.
"Well, who's that?" That's Donald Trump. She didn't know what to say. And that's the way I look at it. I'm with him.
Yes.
I've been with him. So they got me. They got me on that law firm I told you about. It came all the way here to Phoenix, where a federal judge was hearing a case trying to hang me on racial profiling. And he spread that out to 22 days. This is civil. And then he could not get me on a criminal. He whacked it to the other judge, and they charged me, Obama and his bunch, one day before the voting started. Now, the judge's brother-in-law is a big shot with that law firm. He's hearing the case for ACLU. He's the one that's deciding as a judge how much money to give. I'm not going to get it to his wife that was in a restaurant and talking to school chums, and they said, "What does your husband do?" "Well, he's a federal judge. He hates this sheriff we got, Joe Arpaio. He's going to do everything in his power to make sure he is never reelected." I can go on wiretaps and everything. Just read that book.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
that's just one part of this. After me, I was just doing my job. I had authority. I had my deputies trained by ICE, became ICE agents with the other hat. We locked up thousands and thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants. The only one doing that, really. But that was my job. It was a violation of
That's
the
what you're
law to come
elected
into
to
this
do. Exactly. Yeah.
country. And everybody says you're not a Fed. Well, we have two state laws on that too. And even though I'm not a Fed, I can still lock up people with fake IDs. And 99% of the illegals I busted by going into businesses were here with fake documents. Fake documents. Think of that. And I'm going after a fake document, happens to be the president, and nobody will look into it.
I don't think it's completely uncontroversial that Obama bugged you, because Obama was a control freak who was bugging everybody that walked, including his friends. I mean, Prime Minister Angela Merkel of Germany was being bugged, and she went and complained about it to the UN. So he just wanted to know everything about everyone. And it really should be no surprise that he authorized, or at least knew about, the bugging of President Trump when he was running for office, and that he was involved in the unmasking of and denouncement of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn and other cases, which was really a direct assault on the Trump transition and administration. I think that's all coming to light now. Now,
Well, you'll see in the book, excuse me, you'll see in
yes,
the book how I had this information before. You'll see the links on some of
okay,
the things I'm talking about. So I just wanted to interrupt.
not at
I
all.
know those guys. So it's just amazing. I'm just a local sheriff, as you mentioned, chief law enforcement officer for the county, how I got hooked up in two of the biggest hoax in history. Two, me,
Right.
a little old sheriff, but I know what I'm doing and I got the experience from
And by the
that.
way, just to comment briefly on the birth certificate, I don't think that should really be seen as controversial either, because Obama's first book, which he published while he was a state senator, that would be, I think, The Lessons of My Father. The press release and the promotional package that went with that book referred to him as having been born in Kenya, and Obama approved that, because anyone who publishes a book knows that when you get to sign off on any press material that's released. And the publisher explained this after changing it later by saying that he was taking, quote, creative license, which is a very strange explanation. So there's a lot of evidence that Obama was born in Kenya. So this isn't far fetched. So here we are, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, 2 weeks before the election. We've come this far. What is going on in Arizona, and what is going on with the building of the wall?
Well, the wall's still in progress. They're doing pretty good under the president's leadership. And I covered that area for 35 years as a top guy on both sides. So I know a little about walls and the border and all that.
Yes,
Takes a little time, takes a little time. I'm going close to the border tomorrow.
wonderful.
And I'm inviting all the Hispanics to meet with me and buy my book. So I think that's a nice thing. Let them
Yes,
know
it
what the
is.
real story is, what the
And
real
I think,
story
by the
is.
way, that President Trump's ratings among Hispanic voters is going way up.
Yeah,
I don't think that they favor illegal immigration or drug gangs and drug cartels coming over the border and going into major American cities.
no. And I'm supposed to be a racist. I get in the papers every day, 10 times. I have a way of tracking. For 3 years after I left office, I'm still in the papers all the time and TV. Guy from France will be here in an hour. They keep coming. And I keep talking. I'm not
Good.
afraid to talk to the media. Hey, if MSNBC and what the other stations, if they want me on the station, good. Now
No,
Fox hasn't
it's
had me
excellent.
on for over a year. I know them all. I don't know why they blackball me. I think it has to do with a birth certificate, but that's okay. Guys like you're going to get the story out. You're
Absolutely.
you're
It
you're
gets out
important.
there. And it sounds like you're having a big event at the wall, which I hope gets coverage. It certainly should. And, I think that, as mentioned, I mean, President Trump seems to be building momentum. I'm concerned. I think most Americans who care about the future are concerned right now because of the forces that are arrayed against him, willing to cheat with these mail-in ballots and just this incredible assault on him that goes every single day, and these ugly false lies like that he has something against black people, or ridiculous comments like that. Um, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, is Arizona going to stay red? I mean, I've heard that that Trump has tightened the gap there.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping it does. There's a lot of influx of people from California, other places too. A lot of them are Democrats. And when you got all these guys, ex-generals and ex-people that worked for the president, and they're all turning on him. In fact, McCain's wife just endorsed
Yes.
Biden and actually gave $5,000 to my opponent. I just lost that election by 1%. My chief deputy ran against me. I never should have lost that because I wanted to be running now. I'd be helping Trump, working together with him, but I'm still helping him. I'm doing a lot without the badge. I can do a lot with the tongue and my action, just like you do. You
That's
don't
right.
need a badge
No,
to.
you have the tongue and the pen. That's
Yeah,
right.
well, I don't. I have a typewriter in the back of me. I don't have a
Of
computer.
course.
And when you
No, you
heard my
took the old.
phone, that's a flip flopper, and that's My Way. My favorite song is My Way. Actually, I told the president that on the airplane. You, well, My Way means you, and now he started playing My Way. Which, thank you, Mr. President.
Yep. And also,
So
President Trump got my message when I pointed out to him that on the kneeling controversy, that as a Jewish American, I believe that nobody kneels to anybody but God. And then
well,
he
thank
used
you
that.
for that.
Yeah, and
You're talking about
he used this.
the National Football League,
Yes.
the guy from San Francisco.
Right.
When that happened, I took all my veterans in the jail, put them together in tent city. When he was doing that, I had him saluting the flag. See, I knew how to get back. But you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. Why is it that all the teams here, all the owners, listen to this, they're not going to like it. They gave $12,000 each to my Democrat, the sheriff, who got 3 million from George Soros. They know I'm a big supporter of these owners of the president, and they did that. So you know what?
I don't get it. And also the ratings are dropping like a stone. I mean, I don't understand what they're thinking. I mean, they're going to have to pay for that eventually.
Yeah, they're going to pay because I'll tell you what. The New York Times interviewed me. Believe it or not, I sued
Sure.
them, but they interviewed me during my campaign, and he kind of leaked it and said, "Well, the owners don't want you back. You're toxic. You're going to give a bad example to Arizona." You know what my response was? If they worry about the reputation of Arizona, maybe they ought to win a championship instead of selling beer and popcorn. That's
Yeah,
my
right.
answer. They turned on me. The whole establishment, they didn't want me back because I was honest. I said, when I get reelected, I'm going to do everything I did before. I'm going to lock up the illegals. I'm going after drug trafficking. I'm going after corruption. They sure don't want me around, especially that I'm a very close ally to the president, and I don't talk about if I ever meet him. Let me just say he knows my telephone number, okay? We'll leave it at
Yeah.
that.
And it's a very bizarre situation that they would be opposed to these common sense things that any sane person would support. In the same way that you support maintaining your own property, you have to maintain the national property. I mean, this is just a basic. Now, you mentioned all the Californians moving into Arizona who are Democrats. It's interesting. That same phenomenon is happening here in Massachusetts with all the liberal blue Massachusetts Democrats going up to New Hampshire because they want to get low taxes. And yet they're voting blue in New Hampshire. They're turning the state over. It's a strange thing. I mean, you'd think that they might really, be conscious of what they're doing.
Well, I told you I was with the Federal Drug Enforcement in Boston. I had offices in all the New England states. In fact, I supported, I was a campaign guy, honorary for Mitt Romney, for George Bush, for Rick Perry. They forgot my name now. You know how that works. One
Yeah.
reason I supported Romney was the governor of Massachusetts. Remember that?
Oh, sure.
Am I right on that?
I think
Wasn't
Mitt
he the
Romney,
governor?
when he became the presidential nominee in 2012, he forgot the name of his state that he had been the governor of. He just said, "Well, I was the governor of a state." I
Well,
don't know. It's just strange.
he should have said Commonwealth. He probably
Well,
didn't
that's
know
true.
it's a Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Probably didn't even know that.
That's probably
But
true.
that's all. I'm being sarcastic. But I'm proud. I was
Yep.
raised and born. in Massachusetts, and I don't forget my hometown, Springfield. And but I've been around the world, been around the world, gun battles. I can bombs. They go after me with bombs, everything else. And then you got people here, the establishment, the Republicans, always beg for my endorsement. Believe me, every time presidents candidates, they always come to me. I wonder why, and yet they don't like me anymore. I wonder why. I'm the crime fighter. If they want somebody to lock bad guys up, there's nobody better than me. I go into cities as the county sheriff. I raid places. I lock up hookers. I lock up illegal immigration. I go into the cities. Now, most sheriffs up in New England, they usually run the jails. They don't have too much authority, some of them, to do what I do as a full-fledged law enforcement guy. So that's what I do. I took an oath of office. Nobody else will do it. I will. How did I last 24 years? I'm
You
the
know,
longest
it's ironic. It's ironic, Sheriff Joe, that what you're doing, if the establishment did this in major American cities, if they went in and they took the criminals off the street and locked them up and removed them from threatening the 99% of people who are trying to live their lives, then we wouldn't have all of these questions about racism with cops because there wouldn't be a problem. They would have taken, I mean, if it was a white neighborhood, they would have done this. But, you know, the best law enforcement is to go into these tough neighborhoods, these predominantly black neighborhoods and people of color, and clean up the tiny percentage of criminals who are terrorizing those neighborhoods. I mean, it just seems obvious, and yet no one seems to have the will to do it. It's not easy. It's a difficult job. But,
Well,
you know,
you can't blame the cops
no,
because
no.
they
Yeah.
take their orders from the police chief and the city manager and the mayors. And when they say don't go in, but I'll tell you what makes me angry and concerned. We're the
Mm.
we're the most powerful country in the world. I worked in those countries with revolutions, and I was operational. I wasn't behind a desk, even though I ran the office. How do you think they feel when they see cops standing there, people bringing TVs out, rioting, and we do nothing? The strongest, most powerful nation in the world, and we just let that happen? You know what? I used to raid, I had to use that word raid, all these places with my posse. I have 500 armed posse. I used to go into these cities and do my job. You think now, if I was a sheriff, I would let that happen? That's what everybody fears. That's one reason I didn't get elected. And the other reason, a lot of Republicans went south on me, went south on me. They forget what you did for 24 years, risking your life. My wife is 62 years old. She followed me everywhere, supported me throughout the years. She came down with cancer when Donald Trump was running for office, and I was helping him. And she watched Fox, watched out because she wanted to watch Donald Trump. And when I told Donald Trump that story, he called my wife. He didn't have to hook me through my wife. I was hooked anyway. And he's called my wife several times, even when he was president, to see how my wife is doing. Think of that. You think
Oh,
any
yeah. I mean,
other president would do that?
that's the
Think of
kind of
that.
man. That's the kind of man Donald Trump is. I mean, there's all these stories about that going way back with him, and he does it quietly. He's not calling the media or making a big show. I mean, he's an incredible man. I mean, it's almost providential that he is willing to put his neck out and do this job. I mean, I'm so grateful, and I pray for him every day. I pray for his safety, especially.
Well, thank you. He needs it because there's a lot of kooks out there.
Yeah.
I
All
worry
right,
about.
Joe Arpaio, listen, I want to thank you for joining me. Would you let my listeners and viewers know where they can get your excellent book or any other
Amazon,
information? Okay,
Amazon, and it's
excellent.
all true. Believe me.
Oh, so it's a
Read it.
great book, and your story is
Oh,
one they should make a big movie with you
well,
of your
you got
life.
connections. Maybe you can get somebody to make a
Oh,
movie on it. I want De Niro or Pacino. Pacino to play me, okay?
Oh, absolutely. I think Pacino would be particularly good with you. All right. Listen, Joe, thanks so much for joining me as
Thank
always.
you. Bless
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Same to
Thank
you.
you.